Hi everybody, Søren from Perito Consulting here. Just wanted to make sure that you know that this is part 2 of a 2-part series on this S&OP Masterclass. In the first part, we talked with DLG about the company and the high-level impacts of sustainability. In this episode, we dive more into the actual consequences and what they're going to do about it. So if you haven't checked out episode 1, go back and see that. Otherwise, enjoy the show of this part 2. But when you're talking about transportation, but I'm also curious around looking at this, again, huge supply chain that you have. You can't do everything at once.
No.
So on maybe already what you already have focused on will focus on in the near future. Do you have some areas that you already now know will be where you start in your own supply chain?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. One of the key areas that we're looking into is actually something we work on a couple of years, is what we call maturity in our supply chain. Mm-hmm. Because DLG is an extreme operational company.
Yes.
We have been very proud for many, many years and even decades that we are good at firefighting. Meaning that if the farmer calls in this afternoon, 4 o'clock, he needs something for tomorrow, because if he doesn't get the feed, some animals will start starving, potentially dying, of course, but more importantly, his production will go down.
Yes.
And sometimes they can't get it up again. So it has a huge impact on their business. Normally, we're quite proud of saying with firefight, we get everything solved, but that is, of course, by changing the production plan, putting in an extra truck, and so on. So now we're talking maturity in our supply chain, where we are starting to lift ourselves a bit up. So by having day-to-day firefighting, we are just talking about operational planning. Tactical is coming a little bit more. Strategic will come, but it's a little bit further ahead. But just by moving up, saying, okay, we have day-to-day. So what if we start just looking a half week forward or even a week forward, being a little bit more operational, and then also addressing the tactical part. Yeah. That's where we put in the maturity. Because one thing is the planning part, but we are also working on what I would call supply chain design. So our network structure with so many factories, as I mentioned before, so many locations where we are constantly optimizing, closing down, selling off, but also moving activities around. We need to be able to design our supply chain, simulate, working with scenarios, business cases, and so on. Yeah. And that is a very important area together with the planning, where we need to put the sustainability factor in. Yeah. Not necessarily by tomorrow start to decide based on sustainability. We just need to have there as a factor. So we can see that if we decide to move some products that's produced, for instance, in our Aarhus factories, which we are closing down now as part of the design project, into another factory, it might be the most cost effective. We will probably go a little bit up on CO2 on the inbound, but perhaps we will lower it even more on the outbound part. And that is something we are starting to look into. So in our planning, maturity-wise, but also by introducing the thoughts about supply chain design or network structure is extremely key for us as a starting point. Besides all the physical with solar panels and changing company cars and so on, because that's been worked on, but it's being worked on by others in DLG. Yeah. So we try to focus on the core, so down in our production, in our logistical setup. So what can we do there? We also, of course, look at other fuel sources for our trucks and so on. But yeah, that's a different story. But there, of course, we're also doing something. But this is actually where we can do something tomorrow. Yeah. With a clear impact.
But I think that's very, very interesting, because I think, again, where you're a bit different from what we had talked with other companies around this, because I think many companies, they have, and maybe rightfully so, like standalone one-off initiatives. Soy could be a very good example of that. Okay, we find out where are the low-hanging fruits, or at least the big areas, of course, and we set up projects around them, and we try to fix that, and that can have a huge impact. So I'm not saying that's a wrong strategy, but I actually think what you're saying here is, as a general recommendation, very interesting, that we also have to have a certain level of maturity and planning horizon here to be able to include this sustainability in going forward, because the demands will go up on this.
Especially because we also work on the other, but you could say such a big company, you need to find something where all teams and all departments can work on something. But this is actually key to me, that talking about maturity, but because when we talk about maturity, we also need to talk about competences.
Yes.
And I've been working for DLG for 2.5 years, and I'm a little bit of part of the new breed where you can say previously we had a lot of either farmers but also neutral experts within the farming industry and feed production. Not necessarily the best one and doing logistical optimization. So now we're bringing in a lot of more supply chain specialists that has studied some kind of supply chain or production optimization and so on, and bringing that in to the play. Where I actually, in a conversation a couple of months ago with our sustainability director, Jakob, we had a talk about a project where we are working together with the farmers on forecasting. I can also elaborate a bit on that, but we talked about that it's not special what we're doing. So we want to plan what is being put into his silo at the farm. In DLD, we've been working on that for many years, trying to find out how can we evaluate what is or estimate what is in the silo. When do we need to reorder? So we had a talk, and you say, this is a big project, and it's new, it's special, it's not something anyone has done. And then I a little bit balls told him that, okay, if you come from the industry, which I'm coming from, we've been working with Kanban systems and vendor managed inventory for decades. So it's not new. We just need to bring some industry knowledge into the farming industry or into the agriculture. So also by moving initiatives or resources or even competence experience from one industry to another can put things into motion. So that's a big initiative we're working on as well, trying to move our planning down the supply or down the downstream to our farmers, down to our owners, that instead of they ordering on a short horizon every single day, we have a couple of handful of customers now where we are testing it, try to get some signals in from their systems to try and estimate when is it time again for him to get some feed without basically going into back order, if you use that term. They don't do that, but basically it's critical there. So it's just setting inventory levels, and that's extremely interesting because that will also have a clear impact on the climate. Because again, we can limit the number of times where we only deliver 10 tons to him instead of 38 tons, which is the optimal. So extremely important as well, where we have just started to knock or open some doors and
It sounds from an outsider outside the company. It sounds also like many of the things you put in place. One thing is to raise the maturity and set in new processes, set in new tools, whatever it could be. But it also sounds like it's a huge communication task.
It is
making this change.
Yeah, it is. Because you could say we are proud of being owned by the farmers, but we also have 25,000 of them. So it's not just that we need to link up to 100 of them. Of course, we have some large, some big ones, but it's a huge communication, both to them to try and get this collaboration up and running, because there's a lot of GDPR and a lot of different obstructions by just saying we need to get a lot of data from you. We need to be able to handle it, but we also need to have access to it and the confidence that, okay, now we can take over the planning. What is the benefit for them? But especially also internally, because we have a large sales force that has been used to being the link between the farmer and our customer service. So they were proud of the firefighting. So they were proud of that if the farmer calls in saying, John, you need to help me because I'm running out of this type of feed tomorrow afternoon, I really need to get something. Sure, I'll help you. And then he had as his primary goal this afternoon to get into customer service and get it all the way through, because that was a success for him. And now we're boycotting that step. So it's also important to have the sales force part of this journey, that they need to sell that service into the farmer, try to convince them, of course knowing that they will be sidetracked a little bit, because there's a lot of culture and habits in this as well.
But are you generally getting positive feedback?
Yeah.
I know it's a
we do.
tough test.
Yes,
so
we do. Yeah.
It's also something that can make people
Yeah.
proud that you
Yeah.
have this, I guess.
And it's also part of a bigger agenda, which we didn't start, but we're part of it. It's Danish Crown who started something which is called Andel 2.0 or Cooperation 2.0. So looking into how can we optimize it. The old cooperation thought was, back from the 1800s. So looking into a new perspective, how can we do something in the value chain where we can, again back to cost, can actually give the farmer a little bit more for the meat he's bringing in on the pig side. So because that's the carrot for him, that he's able to, if he, for instance, say let DLG fill up his silo, and if he's, instead of having a lot of customized recipes, he can go down to some standard ones. If he correspond to that and say, okay, I'll put away my authority and give it to you, the power that then I will actually earn more, because then I can put my effort into running the farm and running the quite complex production, which industry or professional farm is today, instead of being on the computer, being on the phone, trying to make sure that you get the products. So the cooperation also with the Danish Crown, we have moved a bit further. So we are having tests both on farmers that are producing pigs, but also cows and also chickens.
Okay.
Which is our 3 main segments.
Yeah.
But positive so far. Yeah.
And this thing is how you can say how things are now. But of course, the bit tricky question is also looking a bit ahead. And giving your 2030 targets, and if we be very specific, just curious on how do you see your supply chain planning changing over these years towards that target? You talked about maturity and planning horizons and making that. But for your department, your employees, how will things change, do you think, when you look ahead?
Yeah, a lot of things will change, especially if you look baseline now or last year and then, for instance, 2030. We are helped with that. We are doing a very large business transformation project at the moment, which we call Maya, which has the largest delivery in the project is a new SAP platform, where we have decided to do greenfield, because our old platform is from 1998, so quite old. A lot of customized, because that was in back when we did it the last time. Less standard, more customized, right? Now it's flipped. So we're basically we're turning all the buckets at the moment, moving all the stones, looking what's underneath, what can we optimize, and so we're being helped by this very large transformation focus within DLG. So it's hitting our organization like a big train. I know you use that that vision there, and especially we can say it's a big train. But we are using it quite actively within our supply organization, where we, for instance, we have some factories in England as well. One factory there, mineral factory, where we, as part of the project now, have decided to, instead of trying to build competences on a little bit more complex planning over there, we have moved the century to Denmark. So we will see a lot in our Maya project, where we are using the project as a game changer for optimizing our planning. And that will be, I think, to a large extent more centrally, but also with roles and responsibility, building up what is needed locally, but especially centralizing, because we need more tactical planning. We also need strategical planning, but especially the tactical, and separating operational from tactical is the big thing for us. But also applying analytical resources, because things are getting more complex. Supply chains are more complex, and we have a huge amount of data. And with this new platform, we will get even more. And as you know, if it's not structured, and if it's not something you can, in a form you can use, then it's just actually a pain for you that you have all these data. So we also need the competences to use the data. We need more specialized systems for planning and forecasting, for segmentations of our products, because as mentioned, we have 9 overall supply chains. If we break it down, we have huge amount of variance. But back to the maturity, a part of the journey is also that we are putting more effort now in our organization to address that we don't have all these flows that people call different things. No, we have 9 supply chains. So we put a lot of methodology into our organization, talking about different supply chains and transportation modes. So it's more structured, because that is what we need to use when we are moving the business, moving our teams away from more operational focus to, yes, still operational, but also linked with some tactical, with the analytical part, and you can say strategically that's more the design process, of course also in S&OP, but especially the design, because when we are moving factories around, closing down, potentially building a factory, that needs to be on the strategic part that then needs to drip down.
Yes. But do you also see it being very operational down to the individual planner, for instance, in the sense that could we have a situation in 2, 3, 4, 5 years time where in DLG a planner is not allowed to make a certain planning? It could be a weekly decision due to the fact that this will increase CO2 too much.
Yeah. Yes.
Just to get an example.
A clear answer would be yes, but also follow with that. With having the DLG spirit in mind and our values, we need to bring information down to the individual planner so he or she can take the decision enlightened on what will the impact be.
Yes. Because
even though CO2 emission is a clear target for us and something that we need to say, we can't decide going for something else. We need to reach the target. We still have an obligation as a corporation to, one thing, we need to always be able to accept all the grain coming in when the farmer wants to deliver to us. We have a duty there, but we also have a duty or obligation to deliver feed to any farmers. We can actually not say no to a customer. That's also constraining our supply chain, but that's an obligation, and that comes down to what the planner needs to do. So he or she need to be able to decide that they're doing something. If there's an emergency order or whatever it might be, that here I'm taking a decision that has a negative impact on our CO2, but they just need to do it enlightened. And then we need to have the setup so that it can be caught, you can say, in our analytical and follow-up process, so we can evaluate how did we get to that situation where John had to take that decision. So was it because something was not working as it should in our setup? Has some new kind of variant popped up in our process that we need to take care of? So we are constantly following up and learning from that situation, so we don't get into it again. So I don't think it will be a situation where he or she can't do it, but they need to know what they're doing. So the impact on CO2 being one of them, but potentially also other things. But they need to have that information, and that puts a large constraint on our systems
of course.
and so on.
So coming back to the people and the communication, in the sense that of course we will have some rules, but I guess it's more of helping the planners have the right information to make the best decisions. Luckily, that's a more fun job to have than just being told what to do, of course.
Because when you're adding in nerds or specialists, as we are doing now, especially for my team, we need to be quite careful that we're not building you could say a company within the company. So every time we need to take a decision, it's those wise people over there that need to take it. Now we need to bring it into a cooperation with all our key personnel, which is the one sitting doing all the orders every single day. So we also need to have the specialists trying to upgrade our key office staff. We just support people, and we need to remember that we're not taking over anything, and that's, I think, is also an important focus to have in that, because that's often what you see as an issue with introducing more specialized workforce. How will they cooperate with your regular, I don't know if that's the right word, but I would rather say the key ones, because the ones taking the phones, the ones making the orders, doing production planning, that's the key personnel. We as specialists are just supporting. So we need to get that cooperation up and running. So
what you're of course also saying is there's this two-sided optimization, as we talked about with the finance and sustainability. That's also actually going to be maybe work-life improving for many of our people working within supply chain. Because they, of course, it's a new area, but still very meaningful and tasks they will have going forward.
And a lot of them, they are also, they are, when we're talking about things where we say now we want to measure or simulate transportation cost and how many kilometers are our truck driving and so on, the planners, they are actually quite keen on getting the information because they have thought a lot of times when they're doing something, saying, if I knew how many kilometers and what impact, so they're actually eager to get the information. And so we need to follow that one because they're sitting in the swamp every single day trying to get it fixed. But we have an obligation to create a system where we limit, as I said before, the situations where you need to take a bad decision. Because otherwise the whole setup is not working.
No, that's for sure. It sounds like you really have some very good initiatives in place here, and I'm just thinking if we maybe as a last point and a last topic talk a bit about the future and what could be achieved with sustainability and addressing this area. I think we used the picture of the train. I think it's a very good picture. I don't think you have a choice for many larger companies. You have to take this serious. Both from a legislation point of view, that will continue that development that we see at the moment, but also having a huge push from consumers, from society, from employees for that matter,
for sure,
to work with these things. But it also, for me, it sounds like you have a firm belief that this will be a huge benefit for DLG in the end. Could you elaborate a bit about some of what do you think will be achieved reaching these targets and the directions you have set now?
Yeah, for DLG, actually I'll start with what you said about the employees because we have the issue for DLG being you see a little bit older, some would say dusty company because agricultural setup where you move the old picture, for instance, from the harbor here in Aarhus, that you move some big bags around with grain in, and it's you're not top of the food chain. You're not if you just hiring in warehouse workers, they don't consider that business more interesting than working in a warehouse where you, for instance, move boxes with clothes around. So employee branding is very key here. But that's also on top of the agenda on our creating the Future 2030 strategy. That we want to put away the dusty part and then have this that we actually start in the food chain. So we are impacting the entire food chain. So it's actually extremely beneficial for you on a value basis to work for DLG. We have a big obligation, as you said, as a corporation because we are owned by the farmers, but also by being on top of the list in Europe as one of the biggest ones. So we need to go forward and set the scene. And it's important, extremely important that we take our own medicine. Of course, keeping in mind that our own setup is only 1.2% of CO2, but by delivering into the farmers, so as I said before, when we work with sending feed into them, the way we're doing that, we are affecting the 98%. So we need to constantly look into that part where we can put our customers, our owners, the next in line in the supply chain downstream in a better position to take their decisions on how to operate within sustainability and so on. So it's also needed for us to have a continuously right as a corporation because basically the farmer can produce feed themselves, and they can also export. But we need to do something where we are constantly attractive for our owners, but also for new owners. The farming industry is also in a big transition where a lot of farms is being shut down. They get bigger. They have a generation issue at the moment because there's a lot of farmers that are quite old. So what will the new generation look like and what will the new generation demand from a key supplier as DLG, for instance? So that way around, we need to work on it.
There's no choice.
No choice at all.
But you're also, from my space, working indirectly anyway with the 98% in the sense when you develop new products, when you do things like that, you have a very direct effect on what kind of CO2 emissions has been used to create these things. So I think it's a huge topic and has been so interesting, but we are running out of time. I can see here on my time. thank you very much for joining me here today, Flemming. It was so
welcome,
good to have your perspective of things, and don't be surprised if I ask you back another time to
I'll be delighted. I'll be delighted. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And for you, everybody out there, thank you very much for listening in here today. Hope you got some tips and tricks or got inspired by some of the very great things that Flemming mentioned here today. If you're interested, we're always ready to have a chat on these issues. You can find us through our website, and just reach out. We're happy to connect with you. Other than that, have a great day out there, and thank you for listening in, and hope to see you back on this podcast soon again. Bye.